Hi, Iggy here. Welcome back to Estes Mountain. This is our second episode, and we're following up on the previous episode in which we spent a lot of time terraforming and smoothing the map and getting things set up and ready to start building. And in this episode, we're going to come to a realization really quick that our sense of scale was a little bit off. We'd started trying to build a bridge over this river here, and I realized that the scale was different than what seemed practical. When I think about the rivers and the water in this area, I always think of kind of some narrower streams that are a little bit more windy, a little bit more jagged as they come crashing out of the mountains. And I just didn't feel like we had this sense of that. And so I now realize that as we go through this series, we're going to have to do some pretty significant changes to the map as we go along. But I think the general structure is okay, but getting the actual feel and the vibe of the mountains wasn't where I thought it should be. So we spent the first couple of minutes in this video kind of trying to set that up, and you can kind of get a sense of the differences. And then at the end of the terraforming, I'll come back and we'll have a bit of a kind of a before and after side-by-side comparison, and you can see that I think it looks a lot more natural and just a lot better in general. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the music back on, and I'm going to let you kind of take a watch at what we're doing, and then we'll come back in a couple minutes. So see you soon. So with most of the maps in the central region around our build today pretty well squared away and a little bit more interesting, you can see here that we have our kind of before and after, and I think it's got a better feel to it. It's not quite so volcanic, if you will, and it definitely has some more ridges and things. Now, what I'm showing you now is a picture of the Alpine Visitor Center in Rocky Mountain National Park looking down at the peak. And one of the things that I like about this is just kind of there's a bit of a hike. It doesn't look like it's all that far, but this thing will suck the life right out of you just because of the high altitude at which you're at. Turns out the Trail Ridge Road going through this area is, I guess, the highest altitude road in the geographic United States. And so it's just kind of the sensation and the feel that you have here. It's just this grandiose structure, if you will. And so we start by kind of looking at there's a kind of a valley in between two ridges, and I kind of want to try to replicate that build. And so if you look, we've got, you know, one of our biology park buildings. I forget the exact name of it. It looked pretty cool, and I'll talk more about this in the live play here at the end. But you can kind of see some of the construction techniques that are going for trying to set this build up. You know, it's just basically kind of a small little building with a parking lot. There's a cafe and some restaurants and, you know, bathroom facilities and whatnot. And then this the little trail that you saw in the last photo that goes very steeply up the hill. I didn't quite reproduce it that way, but it gets the same effect. And I think the overall cinematics that come out at the end of that kind of capture the effect that I was after. I was really very pleased with how it turned out. It turned out a lot better than I thought it was while I was building it, in fact. So we'll let you kind of sit back and watch some of the clips of the constructions of these, and then we'll get on to more discussion a little bit later. Thanks. this point, we started working on the path up to the top of the world, the name that we gave to the hillside that we saw in the video earlier. We played with some different options on paths, tried some basic walkway paths and some park paths, and finally settled on the ones that didn't have any adornments. That was one of the things that I had trouble with, was the default paths that come with the game all have, you know, street lights and other add-ons that just didn't seem quite appropriate here. But I was able to find some just bare bones plain paths with nothing else, and thought that would be more appropriate, and it seemed to kind of do the trick. So, you know, where the original path was pretty much straight up the hill, you know, for just a short distance, this path tends to kind of wind its way a little bit, and I kind of partly did that just to kind of, because of the way the hill was laid out and the effect that I noticed early on that you could get as you came up over the hill and looked at the edge, looked out across the river and the lowlands, so to say. It just kind of hit me with the image of, you know, kind of what I would expect to see on something like that. Just kind of a sense of kind of awe, you know. And it was pretty cool the way that it worked out. I'm pretty happy with the way the placement of the paths worked out. I mean, there's not a lot of detail here. We throw a few rocks and some benches and stuff up the top, and, you know, I think there's a fence barricade that goes around the lip, sort of to keep people from falling off the edge. Although, again, you know, at the top of a mountain, there's none of that really there. So, but it's kind of a long, winding, meandering path that, you know, slowly reveals itself as you go around, but yet you don't see the whole picture until you get all the way up to the top. And that was kind of the look that I was going for. So here are the fences. Kind of played with the prop line tool to try to get the fences laid out correctly, and tried several different options, and never really quite got it right until here at the end, when I found these kind of stockade fences to kind of outline just part of the path. And I played with some different types, and like this one I didn't like, and there would be some others that would come up here. So anyway, I'll let you kind of get back to watching, and we'll be back in a moment. The next step that we started to look at doing was establishing the kind of the trail road that follows the mountains up to the visitor center. And so we kind of wound our way back around the edge of the mountain. And again, it was kind of a windy, curvy road, kind of hanging on the edge of a cliff kind of look and feel that we were after here. Now, I ended up using dirt roads on this. I wish there would have been a better option for kind of a narrow paved road without all of the necessary, you know, lane markings and turn signals and all that. So that might change at some point. But for now, I went ahead and went with the dirt roads. Kind of gave us the feel, and kind of, you know, worked to kind of nestle it down in this area. And so a lot of leveling and moving stuff in. And now what you're seeing is found these rock props also on the Steam Workshop that were pretty cool. And it took me a while to kind of figure out how they actually work. And by themselves, they're kind of odd looking, and if you put them, space them out, they were kind of weird. But when you started stacking them and overlapping them, all of a sudden it really started to take the shape of something that looked fairly natural. And I love the rocks and the details that were on these, you know, with them. I mean, the pine trees were already built into it, so that all kind of fit, and we could kind of work our way through there. And then finally we get into what will be the start of our first little settlement. I figured this was just kind of an entry road into the national park, and there might be, you know, a house or two nearby and a simple stall and those kind of things. And that's what we're looking at setting up there. So anyway, we'll get into the live play at this point, and we'll get started. All right, so welcome to the live play. We are currently sitting at really the only intersection in the city, and you can kind of get a sense of the scale that we're trying to achieve now. Obviously, the mountains look a little rounded, and those will change over time. But this is one of my favorite views, because this kind of gives you kind of a sense of the scope and the scale of what it is that we're looking at. And so we'll kind of pull out a little bit. You can kind of get a sense of the way this thing is being laid out, so to say. So I guess you would say that north is generally this direction. Give you a sense of the plots. There we go. That's a little bit better. And so that's kind of where we're at. And so we were looking at the intersection that was kind of down region. So right now there's not a whole lot going on. I've got the main highway coming in. We saw a little bit of that constructed in this video. Some of the challenges of getting basically a tunnel through this mountain to get over to this side of the city. And so top of the world, as we were kind of describing and setting up, was kind of located up in this area, and then that cinematic waterfall is actually over here. So I'll kind of walk you through and kind of show you some of the stuff. Let's go. Oops. I can go back into the game and kind of get a sense of this canyon-y drive as we kind of move up down here. And one of the things that I like about this is that there's no, kind of as the mountains are in the Estes area, there's kind of a tree line feel to what's going on here. Now, that being said, there should probably be some more trees and stuff kind of down in this lower area that will eventually get added. But for now, I'm kind of focusing more on just what can I do, cinematically speaking, to kind of capture the feel of taking this rural road and going up to get up here a little bit, kind of picturing yourself kind of to get down at kind of the road level here. Now if I move along and kind of get kind of a sense of the view that we're trying to establish. And it's kind of a winding trail type road. It kind of works its way up the hillside and kind of follows in, and then you look off to the left and there's kind of this picturesque panorama view. And I kind of like the way this is starting set. This has a lot of that rework of the mountain range that you saw in the video, but you kind of get a sense of the river down below, and then some of the rolling hills and the footlands, if you will, off in the distance, and then some of the bigger peaks kind of peeking up here. And I expect to do a lot of terraforming as we go through and continue working on this. But again, we can kind of work our way through there, and we get up to what would be our Alpine Lodge equivalent. Now obviously I used one of the bio museums, and I forget what expansion that came from. It was kind of a unique looking building. It wasn't my first choice. I would have liked to have had something more rustic, but it was unique enough that I could buy that as being a modern, touristy center at the top of a hill. So that's why I chose to put that there. And so, but again, you get up to this overlook, and now you're looking out across the landscape. And I think this does a real good job of capturing that feel at the kind of what we call the top of the world, so to say. I like that, there's some elk assets that were down here, so I think there's some reindeer down in as well. And so kind of looking out over the natural lands. And that was one of the things that always, captured me when I'd make the trips to Estes Park and Rocky Mountain National Park, is being able to see seeing the wildlife kind of off in the distance, doing their thing, kind of unoblivious to the rest of the world. And so this one's kind of cool. And so, and then this is it's not quite the same as that hike to the top of the peak at the Alpine Lodge, but it gives you kind of that sense that, you come here and there's this trail that takes you up, kind of up the hillside, and there's probably a little bit more detailing that needs to be done. And again, I'm trying not to go too heavy on the assets on texturing this thing out at this point. Potentially there probably needs to be a little bit more dense vegetation down off in the distance. But if I come up and kind of work my way up the hillside, you can see it kind of winds its way up, and then we can get into the trail and kind of follow it. And one of the things I like about this view is you climb up the hill and you don't see much, and then as you come up and over, kind of the grandness of the view is kind of captured. To me, that's pretty cool. Okay, and so from here you can get kind of this is what we call top of the world. You can stand on this peak. It's one of the highest elevations in the park. In this part of the park, and you get kind of a sense of how things are laid out and sprawling down below, off in all the directions. And you can see some of those upper terrace lakes, and even kind of this river that winds through, goes up around. And so this is one of my favorite spots. I'll sit here and just kind of watch things go by. You can actually see I've got airplane traffic that's buzzing around, and you'll see the lights go off here. Still working on trying to figure out how to get the video to not be quite so blurry off in the distance. I think that's something to do with the rendering settings. So if you have any ideas on how I can improve that depth of field, I've got it set at its highest setting. But if you got any ideas, please leave a comment down below. I'll be happy to take a look at it. But this is, I kind of like the way this thing kind of laid itself out, and the kind of the reveal as you walk up the trail. And I kind of get this, to me, this kind of gives me that kind of wow moment as I start to look around. And I can kind of see the ocean off in the distance over here, and then how the river kind of migrates through. So that's one of my favorite areas, and kind of that was the focus of the second video. Okay. Ultimately, I envision seeing, you know, kind of a bigger city area kind of off in the distance, maybe down here with some, you know, some port traffic, or just kind of a more metropolitan area kind of back off in this distance. And then of course we'll have some little, you know, remote field roads that will lead off to those little fishing holes up in the mountains. You know, what we used to call as fish heaven was kind of a term my family used to call this. We found a little, you know, it's kind of out of sight, out of mind. You know, got into, I think one time out of the 10 that we went, the fishing was just phenomenal there. Every cast pulled in a trout kind of situation. And of course the next 8 times we went, and not so much. As time went on, other people started to discover it was kind of our own little secret location of paradise. Those kind of things. Now the other thing I want to kind of show you in this particular video is kind of some of the terrascaping that we did to kind of change things. One of the problems that I had after the initial terraforming in the first video was that just kind of the sense of scale was all wrong. So I'll take you down over kind of down into this area. This was if you remember the cinematic, the initial waterfall was taken right about here. Okay, and when I first started doing the second video, I was looking at, okay, well, one of the things I want to do was kind of get that sense of wonder and you know, being able to traverse the backlands, you know, by trails going off up into the mountains. And I realized that the first thing I did is I put a bridge across this river originally, and it dawned on me that my sense of scale was off. I mean, this river was probably 3 or 4 times wide, probably out to about here wide, and it just didn't fit the sense of the scale of particularly that walkway and that bridge. And you know, the mountains were very, very steep, not real rugged. So I completely reworked this area a little bit. It's a little bit more jaggedy and a little bit smaller scale of stuff, and I think it works a whole lot more. So I'll turn the graphic on, and you can see kind of the water running down, and I've got a little bit of a waterfall situation going. I really wanted to have a couple of those, kind of give you a sense of a drastic change in elevation from what would be, you know, the glacial melts coming into these lakes and then working their way down into the stream. And so, you know, I just really like how this ended up turning out with work on here. And then if you look down this way, even this river got greatly modified, and so a little bit more kind of some rolling hills, and there's some things that we can do down in this area, and potentially, you know, some more trails and some wildernessy areas. I might even put like some campgrounds or something kind of down in this area. And then I completely reworked all of this, kind of giving the mountains just a little bit more sense. But you can kind of, again, you know, get kind of a sense of the scope. So this is the area that we were reworking in relation. So again, kind of getting a sense. We're sitting over the top of this area. Top of the world is up here, and then, you know, as you start to look, I need to work on the camera angles here. But you get the, but you kind of get the idea of kind of what the vibe that we're going for. So I just kind of wanted to start with my favorite area. Right now we have a whopping population of 4. Okay, those people all live in these 2 houses. In fact, I put those houses in, and as I was building it, everybody died off. So this is actually the second owners of the house. And then to kind of help with some of the services, I've got some icons I got to kind of work out here. We've got kind of a recycling center. They're complaining about the cold and wanting, and I've never used that facet of the thing, so I had to put this a road maintenance depot, and then I put a kind of a recycling center, and then the crematorium to dispose of my dead bodies was here at this intersection. So everything is kind of happening here, and then but yeah, that's kind of where we're at. Water supply is kind of back over this way. There's some old roads that will probably be taken out at some point. Water supply is kind of down here for now, and then as pollution kind of works its way into things, then I'll probably have to change this. But spent a lot of time in this one, kind of, like I say, reworking this area of the land so that it's a little more jagged, a little bit more natural feeling, to me anyway. And I know that there'll be more as we kind of develop this to kind of work on. Originally I had a road that was kind of winding its way around this ridge line here and got back in here, and so you can probably see some of the cleared trees a little bit in here. I kind of went back and recovered up a lot of those, but just kind of got back over in here and got a road over to here, and was like, well, now what do I do with it? So I decided, well, let's just focus. I took it out, and let's focus on what's going on with the top of the world and what would be kind of the scenic visitor center here. Okay, now trying to decide. Obviously, I've got kind of what would be like the interstate or the major highway coming through the area, and then I've got this windy road that goes up into the mountains. And eventually, I probably should kind of work this guy back around, an alternate route, maybe down into some area kind of over here. Might be my little my touristy area, or maybe I put it over in this area a little bit more, kind of the way the Estes Park is situated over in this area. So again, just kind of some thoughts on kind of where we're going with this. But it's, I'm pretty pleased with it. It was really simple to build these rock props. Use some of the Ronix props, and then a couple others that were just really detailed, just for putting all these rocks in. A little scabbed together, but I like how it turned out. It's kind of like, say, when you zoom way in, it kind of has that natural rock feel with, again, the tree line, clear areas up above. But this is a work in progress, and we'll kind of evolve it, and we'll see where things are going. So anyway, that's kind of it for today. Not a whole lot going on. It was more me kind of figuring things out and spending a lot of time terraforming. But I love the view, and I like just kind of sitting at this intersection and getting kind of a sense of these guys, sitting at the base of the hills as you take the road up into the hillside. I think it captures kind of the true rustic feel that we want. Anyway, that's kind of where we're at. So we'll keep on going, and this will evolve and hopefully kind of maintain this quaint charm, and we'll work on the grand views of things that we want to see, and kind of hopefully get this combination of a realistic modern city with kind of some fringe, industry and touristy areas kind of on the outskirts up in the national park areas. So anyway, that's what we have. So anyway, thanks for watching today. I hope you enjoyed the cinematics at the end, and we will see you guys next time. Thanks for coming out. Bye.